ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते राधानाथ स्वामी नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे त्वं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। Hare Krishna. So welcome back. Uh, After a few weeks of break, we are resuming our series on the Srimad Bhagavad. We suspended it temporarily because the last 2 weekends we have been, 2 or 3 weekends, we have been discussing the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter-wise overview. Also, we are extending this class, because it's a Zoom class, we are also extending this invite to our devotee friends in India and of course across the world. So we would like to welcome them as well. So thank you for all those who joined. And for some of you, because it's the first time you're coming into this session, I'm going to give a little bit of background and then we are going to go into this chapter. We have been already discussing the Srimad Bhagavad for quite some time. So a little bit about the Srimad Bhagavad itself, so that those who are relatively new to this topic, they come quickly up to speed, at least the key points. And for the others, eating a mango every day is also not a problem. 3 times a day is also not a problem. Mango is so sweet. So and this comparison is given in the Bhagavad itself. Great sages. Go on. Tell me more again and again about the Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the speciality of topics which are related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That they being spiritual in nature are by their very nature very sweet and very tasty. And tasty, when we say tasty, here the taste is the taste which is experienced in the heart. Of course, the Lord is so to say tasty for all the senses, one sense, spiritually, because all the senses become pleased when one sees the Lord. His beauty is so pleasing and hearing about him is so pleasing. So in connection, of course, he is the Lord of the senses, we should work for his pleasure. But when the devotee comes into contact with him, The devotees, all his spiritual senses are enlivened by coming in contact with the Lord. So it's very smooth. So what is the Srimad Bhagavad? In the end of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord concluded his teachings to Arjuna by saying that, Arjuna, my conclusive instructions to you are that ultimately you have to become my devotee. If you want to understand and realize me as I am, and you want the full experience of the potential that the soul has, correct? Each of us has a potential. Yeah, even materially, isn't it? Each of us has a potential. We are born with a particular kind of a body, mind, intelligence. The question is whether we work hard enough to fully realize our potential, or we are lazy to only partially realize our potential, and consequently limit our own success and achievements and fulfillment. So just like this is the case in material life, spiritually also, the nature of spiritual realization is such that the Lord being unlimited, the Lord can be approached and understood at different levels. And we have already discussed this topic earlier in the third chapter of the first canto. Sorry, not in the third chapter, in the second chapter of the first canto, where very beautiful verse is there. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yad jnanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagwan iti shabdate. Even though the Lord is ultimately one and non-dual, he is realized based on the progress of the jiva's spiritual evolution in three aspects. That as a impersonal light, Brahman, or as Paramatma residing in the heart, which is an even deeper realization, or ultimately as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, topmost realization. So the jiva has the potential to reach the topmost realization, which is not just Brahman, not just Paramatma, but to actually experience a divine relationship with Rasaraj Sri Krishna. Krishna, who is the fountainhead of all incarnations, is the source. The Bhagavad itself in chapter 3 has described that while there are so many incarnations of the Lord, Lord Krishna is not an incarnation. He is Swayam Bhagavan. That's why sometimes the Lord in scriptures is also referred to as Purna Purushottam, the complete Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the various incarnations are either referred to as Kala or Amsha, effectively parts or part of the parts. So the full potential of the soul is realized when the soul develops a loving relationship with the full manifestation of divinity, which is Lord Sri Krishna. And that is why that beautiful two-armed flute-bearing form of Krishna is called all attractive, is called Krishna, because he's the full manifestation of divinity. The full moon, Krishna Chandra, is the Purna Purushottam Bhagavan. So at the end of the Gita, the Lord has instructed Arjuna, and through Arjuna, all of us, that we should all develop that relationship with him. If you remember, throughout our Bhagavad Gita chapter overviews, repeatedly the Lord, while he has been talking about various processes of spiritual elevation, repeatedly he has been telling Arjuna and hinting, Arjuna, topmost is devotion. Arjuna, topmost is devotion to me. To me. And it is cultivated through loving me, through offering the fruits of your activities to me. Yat karoshi, yadashmashi, whatever you eat, whatever you do, you offer to me. Even when you're fighting, you remember me. If you do that, by my grace, you'll be very intimately connected to me, and by my grace, all your challenges will be overcome, and eventually you will be able to understand me as I am. It is not that others cannot understand God at all, but they cannot understand God fully. Actually, fully is not the right word. As he is, because of course, full understanding of God is not even possible. Just as much as one can only taste a drop of the ocean, one cannot drink the ocean. But at least in essence, one can understand qualitatively what is the full manifestation of divinity. So that is possible by the process of surrendering to Krishna through love. So Lord Krishna arranged in such a way that after the instructions of the Gita were given, and very soon after Lord Krishna leaves earth to go back to the spiritual world, back to Goloka Vrindavan, he arranges through the agency of Shukadev Goswami, who is the son of Vyasa, and Maharaj Parikshit, who is the son of Abhimanyu, to actually deliver this very special scripture, the Srimad Bhagavat, which in one sense is a sequel to the Bhagavad Gita. Now you may say that if Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has already said, I have given you all knowledge that you need to know in full, then you may say, then what is this question of sequel? So the point is, in the Gita, the Lord has given all the instructions in essence. But the instructions which are pertaining to devotional service, which are the highest set of instructions, have been expanded into a detailed work in the form of Srimad Bhagavat. What does the Bhagavat mean? Bhagavat means which is related to Bhagavan. The Bhagavat talks about Bhagavan, Bhakta, and Bhakti. A perfect devotee of the Lord is also known as Bhagavat. He who has dedicated his life in the service of. So this particular literature, the Srimad Bhagavat, is considered as a crest jewel of all scriptures because it expounds on the topmost instructions of the Gita and makes that instruction practically followable through detailed instructions on the subject by the Lord through various pastimes of various incarnations of the Lord and various pastimes of various great devotees of the Lord. So most of these wonderful stories that we hear, even though some of them are also found across various Puranas, but the stories of great souls, Prahlad, Vyasa, Narada, Dhruva, and so many other great souls, as well as incarnations, Rama, Krishna, of course, who's not incarnation, but who's the Lord himself, Varaha, Vamana, Narasimha, Matsya, Kurma, all these are described in the Srimad Bhagavat and many, many more. I'm just taking a few names. So in these beautiful pastimes, the glories of the Lord are explained in great detail. The glories of the devotees of the Lord are explained in great detail. And the process and the glories of bhakti are explained in great detail. So Bhagavat is like the ready reference book, and it's like the life and soul, the guide that you keep to your chest all the time for those, especially for those who have accepted the conclusions of the Gita and taken it to heart and decided to dedicate themselves to a life of cultivation of that topmost devotion to the Lord. And those who take shelter of this book by studying it in the association of devotees, like now we are attempting to, they, according to the Lord himself, become very, very rapidly purified and very quickly they develop attachment to the Lord. That is the special potency of the Srimad Bhagavat. And that is the reason, after completing the study of the Gita, we have taken up the study of the Bhagavat. That is the appropriate thing to do. Bhagavat is the subject matter which is actually meant for the devotees. And the more we are non-envious, free from any materialistic tendencies and competitive spirits, And the more we are actually in love with the Lord, the more we will relish in our heart the discussions of the Bhagavad. Like the sages in the forest of Naimisharanya who were hearing the Bhagavad from Suta Goswami, they said, Vayam tu na vitrupyama uttama shloka vikrame yat shrunavatam rasadnyanam swadu swadu pade pade. Please do not stop narrating, oh Suta Goswami. Suta Goswami had heard the Srimad Bhagavad directly. If you can see the scene behind me, my background, yeah. So that is the original narration where Shukadev Goswami is narrating the Bhagavad to Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj was cursed. That story will come again in the Bhagavad a little later. But he was cursed to die in 7 days. And having been cursed to die in 7 days because of a small mistake, he was waiting for guidance as to what he should do. It's only 7 days. Whether he should go on a world tour or on a cruise or party for 7 days. I mean, if we were there, we may have thought of all these options. But he had no doubt that the topmost goal of life is spiritual. But even within the spiritual realm, he wanted to understand what is the topmost instruction. And Shukadev Goswami was unanimously accepted as the topmost authority on the planet at that time. Actually spoke the subject matter of the Bhagavad to him. When he asked him, what is the topmost of everything that one should hear, especially when a person is about to leave the world? And also, what is the perfect thing to hear for those who are in this world throughout their life? This is the subject matter which was spoken by Shukadev Goswami. So in this assembly, Suta Goswami also heard the Srimad Bhagavad. He is seated in this assembly, seated behind me. You may be able to see him. So Suta Goswami heard it. Yeah, and of course, this knowledge is then coming in disciplic succession. Actually, we are fortunate, we are receiving this knowledge directly in disciplic succession from Vyasadeva himself. So that is our attempt, and that is our good fortune, and that is also our attempt to share this with others. So Suta Goswami narrates this Bhagavad knowledge to the sages of Naimisharanya, and they are again and again telling Suta Goswami, on and on and on. This is so sweet. This is so beautiful. So why I'm mentioning this is, as one cultivates a deeper and deeper relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is the essence of the Bhagavad, simply by hearing about the Lord, simply by chanting His holy name, simply by rendering some service to Him and His devotees, by these simple, zero cost activities, zero cost, simply by remembering Him, one can experience such divine pleasure and satisfaction and fulfillment in one's heart that all other material attractions in this world appear very insignificant as compared to that. So when you see those who are very great devotees of the Lord, why are they so detached from the world? They are so detached because they are so fully satisfied in their deep connection with the Lord that the outside sensory temporary happiness doesn't excite them. The Bhagavad Gita, the Lord said, just like when rivers of desire flow into the ocean of the consciousness of these great souls, because their consciousness has become so oceanic and expansive based on a very deep, profound experience of the love of the Lord, very undisturbed. They are so stable, they are so satisfied, they are so anchored in divine consciousness. They cannot be shaken. And this is explained in the Gita. So anyway, so this is this beautiful narration which happens to the Bhagavad. And the Bhagavad is especially relishable. I'm just giving you a few glimpses here and there. We have recordings of all our previous classes, may not be all, but quite a few of the previous classes on Bhagavad. We are currently at chapter 9 of the first canto, which is the passing away of Bhishma Dev. Actually, we have discussed most of this chapter already, actually, the last time. But I was thinking that probably it's a good starting point because there are some newer audience here as well. So I thought I will discuss a bit on that chapter briefly also today. And then we will continue on to the next topic. So the way we are actually discussing this particular series of the Bhagavad is we're not going verse by verse. Bhagavatam is 18,000 shlokas. Bhagavad Gita was 700. So you can assume if you discuss one verse per week, uh, all 25, 30 of us would have to come here for many, many lifetimes to complete the Srimad Bhagavad. So since we all want to go back to Godhead in this lifetime, and for that we should complete the Bhagavad. So we will go at a slightly faster pace. Ideally, I would have loved to do one chapter per 1 hour session. So the sessions are going to be 1 hour. But the Bhagavatam is so sweet, so sweet, so sweet. Bhagavad Gita is sweet. The Bhagavatam is very, very sweet. So when something is very, very sweet, you don't want to rush and grab and squeeze it into your mouth and push it down your throat. You want to relish it. Yeah? At least that is my nature. When I get some very tasty dish which I really love to eat, which I really love to eat, then at least for myself, I love to eat little bites. I would like to relish every morsel of what I love. Then I enjoy that taste. So, of course, we cannot go very slow also, like what I told you, otherwise it will take many lifetimes. But what I will intend to do is, I'm not setting a target for myself. Yeah, because I want it to be a little more naturally flowing. But obviously, we'll not be doing 1 or 2 verses. Today, my intention is to complete this chapter because I have already discussed the chapter earlier. But in some chapters, I prefer to take a specific subsection of the chapter and then discuss on it. Because the Bhagavatam is not about just, we want to go into the finer aspects of the process of bhakti, about the glories and qualities of the Lord and the devotees as we discuss Bhagavad. So this is where we have to dive deeper for the gems. So no point rushing. No point rushing. This is where we need to ensure that we have actually collected the jewels. So for collecting pearls, just like a diver has to dive deep enough into the ocean, so we have to go deep enough. So we have to strike a right balance between speed and depth. So keep that in mind. So sometimes we may cover a part of the chapter, sometimes we may cover a chapter, but generally we'll be going through sequentially. Of course, just like we spoke about the Gita, if you read through the chapters upfront, it'll be very nice. So you will also find it more relishable. And also, if you have specific questions on the topic, also you will be in a better position to ask them if you have read the chapter upfront. If for whatever reason you're not able to read it upfront, then do read it after we have had our discussion. That will be also very nice. Okay, so any basic fundamental question on what I have spoken so far before I get into this chapter, because I do not know what you do not know. So if there is any pushing question right now on what we are doing and how we are going to go about, you can ask now. Okay, good. So that means everybody is with me. Okay, good. So the 9th chapter of the first canto, the Srimad Bhagavad is covered in 12 cantos, and we are still at the first canto, so we are very early. We are just about begun the Srimad Bhagavad, and we are on the 9th chapter, which is somewhere around midway in the first canto. So of course you can go back and read the first 8 chapters. It covers various beautiful topics about the Srimad Bhagavad and how the Srimad Bhagavatam itself came about, which includes the background stories about Narada, Vyasa, which has been discussed so far, a little bit about the birth of Parikshit. Yeah. So some of the key characters of the Bhagavad and their backgrounds and what led to this particular great epic being spoken, they have been discussed. And now the narration that is happening is where Suta Goswami is explaining that after the battle of Kurukshetra, after the Pandavas won, practically like what the Lord said in the Bhagavad Gita, practically all the Kauravas were destroyed. There were only 3 warriors on the side of the Kauravas who survived, and they were actually all Brahmanas or connected to Brahmanas. One was Kripacharya, then Kritavarma, and Ashwathama. So these 3 were not killed, but all other Kshatriyas, each and every person was wiped out. And the Lord had already promised that to Arjun, that everybody is going to be wiped out. So if you may recollect that Bhishma, I believe it was the 10th day, if not wrong, we discussed this the last time, that Bhishma was pierced with arrows by Arjun, and he fell on the battlefield of Kurukshetra on a bed of arrows. But because he had the benediction of Ichha Mrityu, he hasn't passed away. And this particular chapter discusses about the passing of Bhishma. So I want to take some time to discuss about Bhishma's life. I may not go into all the details of the chapter itself because we discussed that at the last time, but I'll go through some key points again. But I want to discuss a little bit more about Bhishma. Bhishma is a very wonderful, a very amazing character. Most of us would just think of Bhishma as a great warrior, but very few individuals know that actually Bhishma is a very, very great yogi. In fact, the Srimad Bhagavad identifies Bhishma as one of the 12 most accomplished devotees of the Lord, who are referred to by the term Mahajana. Mahajana means very great individuals. And the list begins with great personalities like Brahma, Shiva, Vyasa, Narada. So you can imagine what is the kind of stature that Bhishma comes in that list. Chanaka, Bhishma, Shukdev Goswami is also from that list, Prahlad, and a few others. So Bhishma has had a very, very interesting life. Even though he had a very long life from an external perspective, his life has been actually very far from being smooth. In fact, probably Bhishma is that personality who, in spite of being very learned and very devoted, actually went through probably the most, if not the most, amongst the most challenging situations in life. In his previous birth, Bhishma was a Vasu. So there are 8 Vasus in the heavenly planets, and he was their leader by the name of Prabhasa. So in his previous life, this Vasu, these 8 Vasus, along with their 8 wives, who are from the heavens. Now see, this is the problem with heaven, because heaven is having, so much opulence, so much enjoyment, so much beauty, youth, and all these things. Sometimes when one has all things going his way, a person becomes intoxicated with pride and doesn't understand what he's doing. So it so happened that these 8 Vasus were visiting and walking around the ashram of Vashishta Muni. And the wife of Prabhasa Vasu saw in the ashram of Vashishta, a Kamadhenu cow. Kamadhenu is a wish fulfilling cow. So you can ask from her not just milk, you can ask from her anything. So Vashishta had in his ashram, and he would of course not be interested in other material possessions, but he would just anything he needs for his needs or for his worship, for his seva, he would ask her and she would produce instantly. Kamadhenu. So the wife of Prabhasa wanted the Kamadhenu for herself. Vashishta was not using it for himself, he was using it for religious duties, and duties done in such a way that they would benefit the whole world. She was selfish for her own purpose. So she told her husband that let us steal the Kamadhenu. So he was pushed by his wife that he should steal the Kamadhenu. And then he gathered together with the other 7 Vasus. But it was Prabhasa who actually untied the Kamadhenu and stole her from the ashram of Vashishta. Of course, Vashishta is such a great sage. You can't hide anything from him. He's a Trikalagya. So he detected, and to cut a long story short, he confronted them. He not only recovered the cow from them, but he actually cursed them. Because it doesn't behoove. You're such great devatas and you're doing such a petty, stealing act, that too from a great Brahmarshi. This is unacceptable and unforgivable. So, in fact, Vashishta Muni curses the 8 Vasus to be born on earth as humans. So, of course, those who are addicted to the heavenly happiness, for them to come back, to come down to the earth is actually a big pain. So, they were all falling at the feet of Vashishta, saying, no, 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 it is such a low class place, this earth. Very low class. We don't want to go there. So, please forgive us. We made a mistake. Forgive us, please, 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 please. So, Vashishta Muni, of course, being a great self-controlled sage, seeing their genuine repentance, he says, okay, out of the 8 of you, 7 of you, as soon as you are born, you can be relieved from your human condition and you can come back to heaven. But you have to go through death practically very soon after you are born. They said, okay, no problem. We don't mind dying, but we want to come back to heaven quickly. But Prabhasa, because he was the leader of this scheme to steal, he would have to live a long life on earth. That was the curse of Vashishta Muni. A long life, but after Prabhasa begged him, he said, okay, I give you a blessing also, that even though you will have a long life, you will be extraordinary. Your life will be extraordinary. You will have extraordinary knowledge, extraordinary power, and you will accomplish many things in your life. So that was the background of how Prabhasa actually became Bhishma. We'll come to the birth of Bhishma shortly. But I just want to make one point here. Let's just think about it. From an external angle, it may appear that the 7 Vasus were spared, but Prabhasa was punished, isn't it? But if you look at the final consequence or the final outcome of this whole episode, the 7 Vasus went to heaven. But this one Vasu, Prabhasa, in this one life, he lived, I think, a couple of 100 years, Bhishma, on this planet. I don't remember exactly how many, but definitely more than 200. Because he had Ichha Mrityu. We'll come to that shortly. He, at the end of this life, his life as Bhishma, in a few hundred years, achieved the perfection of God realization. And at the end of that life, achieved the supreme destination, the supreme abode. So who actually was benefited? Was it the one who was given the concession, or was it the one who was given the punishment? Just reflect on it. It's very interesting to think about this. And that is why throughout the scriptures, the Lord and the great sages keep saying that even more auspicious than being born and living on the heavenly planets is to be on earth. Why? Because earth has the necessary required conditions so that one can focus and practice spiritual life in an intense, dedicated way, in such a way that within his one lifetime or very soon, he can actually achieve the topmost perfection of life. Whereas devatas may remain trapped in an enjoyment atmosphere for thousands and thousands of earth years. Even one or a few lifetimes on this earth, which may be a matter of only a few hundred years, living entities can achieve the topmost destination. So in one sense, while Prabhasa was cursed, actually he was blessed. Because he was given that opportunity to be born in a place and time where he would connect directly with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. And he would fall in love with him to such an intense degree that he would, in that fire of that devotion, burn all his material attachments and contaminations and achieve the topmost destination. That is why even in the Devaloka, those who are sober and intelligent, spiritually intelligent, they always aspire birth on earth. So why I'm saying this? So we should all recognize how fortunate we are, because we are already in that situation. And we are not just fortunate because we are on earth, because there are 7 billion people on earth. But we are on earth, but we have a fortune like Bhishma, that we are in contact with the Lord and his devotees. Scriptures like Gita and Bhagavad, where we also have an opportunity, just like Bhishma, to actually achieve the topmost goal of life in a very short time. It is not necessary that the Lord has to be personally present on the planet. The Lord is present on the planet, and the Bhagavad itself mentions this. Krishna Swadhamopagate, when Lord Krishna left the planet for the spiritual world of Goloka, he left behind himself in the form of the Srimad Bhagavat and the holy name and his pure devotees. But especially the Bhagavat, which is so easily approachable. And through the association of the Bhagavat, one can actually receive the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, rapidly purify oneself, and develop the devotion like these great souls develop. So that is the very special benediction we have. And I cannot emphasize this enough, because I am not at all exaggerating. In fact, no matter how much I speak about this point, it would still be an understatement. Srila Prabhupada, once when he was addressing some of his students, he made a very interesting point. Said, if you can actually understand, you, earth people think ourselves as very ordinary and in the Kali Yuga circumstances typically unfortunate and disturbed. He says, if you actually understand the very, very, very special blessing that you have, especially those who are in contact with the devotees of the Lord and the Gita and the Bhagavad, the very, very special opportunity that you have. If you can actually understand how fortunate you are, if you actually understand how fortunate you are, you will faint. Prabhupada said, you will faint if you actually are able to understand. And so the fact that none of us have fainted now means we haven't fully understood. I haven't either. Yeah. So we still need to appreciate this point more deeper and deeper and deeper. But the benediction that we have, the opportunity that we have, which is especially extended not just by Lord Krishna, but by Lord Krishna in his form of Lord Chaitanya, is actually such a beautiful opportunity, which is available only once in a day of Brahma. It's a very, very special opportunity to reach the topmost spiritual consciousness in the fastest possible way. It doesn't get easier than this. So if we miss this train, then we have to be waiting on the platform for a very long time for the next train to come. So coming back to the pastime of Bhishma, Bhishma was fortunate because he got that opportunity. He was directly on the planet. He was connected with great souls from the very beginning. So I'll just highlight a few points from the life of Bhishma Dev. He was born in this world to Maharaj Shantanu and Ganga Devi. Now, Ganga Devi herself was cursed because of a mistake she performed in the heavenly planets, that she was asked to be born on earth. That's another story. I will not go into that today. She came as the wife of Shantanu. Again, that's another long story how they met. So I'm just going to stick to those portions which are directly connected to Bhishma. So Shantanu, not knowing who Ganga was, that she was Ganga Devi, he gave her a vow that I will not question you about anything. And Ganga Devi, after they got married, gave birth one after another to 8 sons. And after every son was born, she would just pick up the son, go to the Ganga and drown the son immediately after birth. Why was she doing that? Because each of those sons was one of the Vasus who was cursed by Vasishta. So actually she was helping them out, helping them get rid of the curse and go back to the heavens. But Shantanu Maharaj, not knowing anything of the background, was so distraught and so miserable that finally when she was about to drown the 8th child, Maharaj Shantanu couldn't hold it anymore and he stopped her and said, no, 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 I can't take it anymore. You must please explain to me what is all this that is going on. I cannot take it. So then she revealed the background. She revealed who she is. But at the same time, she said that I'm sorry, you have broken your vow, so I need to go back. You will never see me again. But this son of yours, he's still too young. I will take him with me to the heavens. I will bring him up, and at the suitable time, after he has completed his education, I will hand him back to you. So Ganga Devi actually takes him with her and then takes care of his education. So his name was Deva Vrata. So he was taught by the topmost sages of the universe. Amongst his teachers are Brihaspati, Vasishtha, and so many others. Also, he learned the art of weapons from Lord Parshuram himself. He was so accomplished. Indra gave him many celestial weapons. So he was accomplished like nobody else on the planet at that point in time. He was undefeatable by anybody else. Simply extraordinary. Son of Ganga Devi herself. And also later, after he was Devabrata was handed back to Maharaj Shantanu, then another challenge came in the life of Bhishma. Actually, he was not Bhishma at that time, he was still Devabrata, wherein Maharaj Shantanu wanted to marry Satyavati, and Satyavati put a condition that Bhishma should not become the king, but rather my son, who's not yet born, whenever he is born, he will become the king. Shantanu refused. But Devavrata, when he found out the cause of his father's misery, he took the Bhishma Pratigya, the very difficult vow that I will remain a celibate throughout my life and I will always protect the throne, but I will not sit on the throne. So he gave that vow, and from that day onwards, he started becoming known as Bhishma, the one who has taken a very, very, very difficult vow. Shantanu Maharaj became very pleased with his son Devavrata, and he gave him a blessing, because Shantanu Maharaj is also very extraordinarily spiritually advanced. So he gave a benediction to Bhishma that because of your great sacrifice, I give you this boon of Ichha Mrityu, that you cannot be killed unless you want to leave the world. You will not leave your body. That is the benediction. So this benediction actually came in very handy for Bhishma. Not just because he had a long life of a few hundred years. The scriptures say, what use is a long life which doesn't have any substance? Even certain trees live for hundreds of years or thousands of years standing in a place. So the scriptures do not glorify just the length of the life, but the scriptures emphasize the quality of the life. But why this benediction came in very handy is what we are going to discuss in this chapter, because this is where Bhishma used that benediction in such a way that he waited till the time the Supreme Lord Krishna came in front of him, so that as he was seeing the face of Krishna, absorbed in full meditation on the form of the Lord, he left the world and went back home, back to God. So you see, everything that happens, you see, so many curses, challenges, blessings, how? Actually, everything can be used in a positive way. It depends on how we look at it. Even difficult situations turned out to be a blessing because he used it in the right way. He didn't remain frustrated. Oh, all these 7 Vasus have gone to heaven. I am trapped here. His thinking was, in fact, very different. He said, wow, I got a good chance. Just like now we are in lockdown. Some of us are frustrated. Some of us are thinking, wow, I got a few months. Let me try to do something extraordinary with it. I will quickly study the Gita. I will improve my quality of devotion. Some people are saying, let me acquire new skills. Yeah, it's in various ways. So Bhishma took that opportunity. Yes, this is my chance to escape from the ocean of birth and death. And he also achieved this benediction, which is used in the right way. At the time of his death, he absorbed his consciousness in the Lord and achieved the supreme destination. So Bhishma, he saw Vichitravirya, who's the son of Satyavati and Shantanu, become the next king. Then after Vichitravirya, then others came in, and then there were so many kings, and then eventually, of course, after Pandu passed away, Dhritarashtra took over the throne. Actually, Dhritarashtra was not supposed to be the king. Dhritarashtra was always supposed to be caretaker of the throne until the Pandavas grow up. At this point, many people do not understand. It was not that Dhritarashtra was meant to be the king. He was actually disqualified earlier because he was blind. But later, after Pandu died and there was nobody else, he was installed as a caretaker until the Pandavas grew up. But he was so attached to the throne that he wanted his own son Duryodhan to become the next king rather than the sons of Pandu, headed by Yudhishthir. So, of course, they did so many conspiracies to get rid of the Pandavas. But to cut a long story short, it all culminated. The Lord always supported the Pandavas because the Pandavas were so devoted, so pure in heart. The Lord protected them all along, and ultimately the whole episode culminated in this war, which even though the Lord very clearly warned, Duryodhan and Dhritarashtra refused to listen, and eventually the inevitable happened. Now, Bhishma's position in this particular battle is quite interesting because many people ask, if Bhishma is such a great soul, why did he side with the Kauravas? Now, this is another very interesting point of discussion, and I'll mention this very briefly. We discussed this in the last class quite in detail. at a very external level, the explanation is because Bhishma had sworn allegiance to the throne of Hastinapur. He decided to fight whoever is sitting on the throne. But actually, Bhishma knows much better than that, that this kind of duty or Raja Dharma is not higher than the Bhagavad Dharma. What is the Bhagavad Dharma? Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchah. Krishna has already told in the Bhagavad Gita that if duties are clashing, always select the higher duty. And the highest of all duties is to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is why the Lord says at the end of the Gita, Sarva, you can surrendering to me is the highest duty. All other duties can be sacrificed if they conflict. Of course, not whimsically. Not that one says, okay, I am surrendering to God, so all my duties I put in the dustbin. No, not like that. If one whimsically neglects his duty, he is punishable. But when there is a genuine conflict and one has to choose between one or the other, and that happens many times in life, not just with spiritual duties, but so many duties. Sometimes there's a clash between duty at work and duty towards wife. Yeah, then one has to choose one of the two. Or there is duty towards country and duty towards one's family. They clash. Yes. So these kinds of clashing are common occurrences throughout life. And these are known as dharma sankats, where there are two dharmas which are clashing and one has to make a choice. So the guiding principle the Lord has already given. The guiding principle is that the higher dharma must be followed and the lower one must be sacrificed if there is actually a situation that it is impossible to fulfill both of them simultaneously. Of course, if we cheat, then we suffer. So it is not that, we just have to go and convince the public. No, the Lord in the heart knows what our actual situation is. So if we cheat, we suffer, obviously, for neglect of duty. But if genuinely there is a conflict, then there is no fault if the lower duty is sacrificed for a higher duty. So we would have expected Bhishma to sacrifice his vow. Actually, Krishna has done that many times. Krishna has sometimes sacrificed his vow to serve a higher purpose of the welfare of all living entities or for the protection of his devotee, because that he considers higher. And that is a special characteristic of the Lord. And in this chapter, that particular pastime is again mentioned. So, it came to the battle, and normally we would have expected Bhishma to switch sides, but he did not, because the great souls mention that Bhishma understood that it is Krishna's desire that he fight, he meaning Bhishma, fight on the side of the Kauravas. Why? Because the Lord wanted to set that example for the world that doesn't matter who it is who's on the opposite side of myself. If I and Dharma is on one side, doesn't matter who's on the other side, victory will always be of Dharma. So to make that lesson very strong and pronounced, the Lord arranged it in such a manner, and Bhishma, being a very obedient servant of the Lord, did it so. Bhishma was never so much attached to his own glory or his own position. He was always willing to do whatever it needed. In fact, in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, there's a very beautiful episode, and I want to mention that episode because that episode is again quoted in this chapter. And that beautiful episode is that when Lord Krishna decided to become the charioteer of Arjuna, he had promised Arjuna that he'll become the charioteer, but that he would not lift a weapon. But Bhishma who is such a special devotee of the Lord, in a very uh, sporty way, he took a vow that he will ensure that he forces the Lord to take a weapon. So that was very interesting. The Lord has promised, I will not take a weapon, but the devotee is taking a vow that I will force the Lord to take a weapon. So how can a devotee think like that? So I'll narrate the pastime first, and then I will speak about this. And this is the beauty of how the devotee actually understands the real desire in the heart of the Lord. So when Bhishma was turning out to be a very huge challenge to the victory of the Pandavas, and when Lord Krishna saw that Arjuna is not actually putting his best, he is feeling too affectionate to his grandfather and he's not putting his best effort to fight. At one point, Lord Krishna, because he had already told Arjuna, you must put your best effort. I will help you, but you must put your best effort. At one point, externally, the Lord became so exasperated with Arjuna's lack of full effort, even after repeated instructions, that the Lord suddenly, in the middle of the battlefield, stopped the chariot and he told Arjun, either you kill Bhishma, or if you don't kill, I am going to kill him right now. The Lord actually jumped off from the chariot and he started running towards Bhishma. He was running directly towards Bhishma. Bhishma was in his chariot. And Bhishma was so excited to see Krishna running towards him. And as he was seeing Krishna running towards him, Bhishma, because earlier when Bhishma and Arjuna were fighting, there were actually arrows which Bhishma had shot towards Arjuna, and some of those arrows actually hit Lord Krishna. So at an external level, because this is a play of the Lord's Yogmaya energy, externally, it seemed that Lord Krishna had wounds on his body, and his body was bleeding because of the arrows of Bhishma. Of course, this is all done by the Yogmaya energy, because the Lord doesn't have a material body like us. But when those arrows were hurting Krishna was actually feeling the love of Bhishma. So that was actually a very divine exchange of love. So we cannot understand this. This is a very high level topic. So please don't do like that. Don't say that from tomorrow I will start shooting Krishna and Krishna will find it very enjoyable. So that is at that level. For us, let us just offer Naivedya and worship and Aarti. When it comes time, we will do all this. So that was the kind of sweet relationship that they had, that he was even enjoying the arrows of Bhishma, because Bhishma was shooting those arrows with such love. And Krishna was running towards Bhishma, and Bhishma was getting more and more excited. And Krishna, as he was running towards Bhishma, he saw one broken chariot and he picked up a chariot wheel. And holding the chariot wheel like a chakra, like a weapon, like a Sudarshan chakra, held it in his hand and he was rushing towards Bhishma to kill him. And as Krishna is running, Bhishma, seeing that Krishna is running towards him, he becomes so happy. He's saying, I am waiting for this day only, Lord. You will kill me. What more do I want? And this is exactly what I wanted. I have been praying that I will make you take weapons. I have forced you to take weapons today. So actually the Lord, in one sense, you can say he took a weapon because he took the chariot wheel, but another way, he didn't even take a weapon because it was not a weapon, it was a chariot wheel. So the Lord actually, played, he was on the, he fulfilled Bhishma's desire, but he didn't fully break his vow also. So the Lord is very clever. He knows how to manage all these situations. So the whole reason Bhishma did this, and Krishna was rushing towards him, the whole reason he did this was he wanted to prove and show to the world how much the Lord loves his devotee. He loves his devotee so much that he does not mind even spoiling his own name and reputation. When it comes to choose between his reputation and the devotee's reputation, the Lord always chooses the devotee's reputation. And he performed this pastime with that intention to glorify Bhishma. Sorry, to glorify the Lord. Bhishma performed it to glorify the Lord, to show that character of the Lord to the world. And he knew the heart of the Lord, and the Lord knew the heart of Bhishma. But as this was happening, Arjun became very disturbed. He said, "Oh Lord, what is this? He is rushing towards killing Bhishma, and if he does that, I will, it is all because I am not doing my job properly. This is not good. I am displeasing the Lord." So he ran behind towards Krishna, and from behind, he actually held Krishna back around the waist, and he stopped him just as he was about to charge and throw the weapon. And he promised the Lord, "Please don't do this. Don't break your vow. I promise you, I will kill Bhishma." And then, of course, that episode happened where Bhishma was actually shot with arrows by Arjun, keeping Shikhandi in front, because that is what Bhishma himself suggested. And then Bhishma was lying on the bed of arrows. And this particular chapter is actually after the Mahabharata war has ended, where Bhishma is still lying on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Everybody else has died. Bhishma is still alive because of his vow. He's still waiting. At a very external reason, Bhishma is waiting because it is not yet Uttarayan. If you remember in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 8th chapter, the Lord explains that the yogis who have perfected their consciousness in Brahman realization, attain the supreme Brahman, if they pass away during the Uttarayan, during the daytime, during the influence of the fire god, during an auspicious time. So many descriptions are given. So at an external level, Bhishma was waiting for that, but actually he was waiting for something else. What was he waiting for? He was waiting when the Lord will come in front of him, because obviously in that situation, he was not able to move. He was lying on a bed of arrows. So when the Lord actually came there along with the Pandavas, Bhishma was so happy and pleased. His eyes were full of tears. When Bhishma saw the Pandavas, first of all, of course, he offered his respects to the Lord. Of course, he could not fold his hands or welcome them. He probably spoke a few sweet words to welcome them, but with his eyes, he welcomed them with great love, and he offered his respects in whatever way possible to the Lord. And at that time, because it was such a great event, Bhishma's passing away from this world is such a great event that the greatest sages in the universe came down to witness that event. Yeah, because what a rare event when one of the greatest devotees is passing away with the Lord in front of him face to face. How many times you get to see such a episode live? So not just Vyasa, Narada, Parvat Muni, Vashishta, so many great sages were actually there. Parshuramji was there. Parvat Muni was there. Asita, Gautama, Atri, Kaushika, so many great sages were present. So Bhishma, when he saw the Pandavas, his eyes were full of love and they were crying tears, and he was just glorifying the Pandavas like anything. He was saying, "You are so great and you are so special. But I'm feeling so sad. You had to go through so many challenges in life. You went through so many reversals. And the only thing I can say is, even though you went through so many challenges, it is only because of the Lord's blessings, the devotees' blessings, and because you are following dharma that you remain protected. Otherwise, there was no way you could have survived through all this. You have been through conspiracy after conspiracy and assassination attempts after assassination attempts. So this is only because of the protection that you had." And then he also says a very beautiful point. He says, "It is so difficult to understand the Lord's plan. The Lord, even though he was personally present with you, You went through so many situations, you went through so many challenges. This is so bewildering to the ordinary mind. It is very difficult to understand why the Lord does what he does, especially for his devotees. But the devotees have such unflinching faith in the Lord that they are always surrendered to his plan because they know that the Lord is actually pressing the accelerator button, the accelerator pedal uh, in the car of their spiritual elevation. And they are happy that the Lord is quickly purifying them and taking them back to God. Of course, in the case of the Pandavas are already great pure souls, but through their life, the Lord is actually demonstrating to the world the character of the pure devotees. He says that even the greatest of the devatas, neither Brahma nor Lord Shiva can figure out what is the plan of the supreme personality of Godhead. It's very difficult. But the devotees, nonetheless, have always full faith in the plan of the Lord. So, after glorifying the Pandavas like this and describing the glories of the Lord and saying that you are so fortunate, all the people in this world think this Krishna is just another great king, but only these great sages are assembled and a few others of us understand he is the source even of Narayan. He's the origin of Narayan. And he's walking amongst us. We are so fortunate. And you are so fortunate you have such an intimate relationship with him. And I am also so fortunate that somehow I am also connected to him. It is such a great fortune. So, Lord, you have been so kind that you have come here. I just ask one blessing from you. Please be visible to me as I am leaving this world. That's the only thing I'm asking for. But then soon after that, Maharaj Yudhishthir, he wanted to learn from Bhishma before Bhishma passed away of all the wisdom that Bhishma had with respect to ruling, managing, the laws of dharma, etc. So actually Bhishma at that point in time instructed Yudhishthir Maharaj in great detail on the various subjects of knowledge. And one of the very famous sections from that teachings of Bhishma ji to Maharaj Yudhishthir is the very famous Vishnu Sahasranam. Vishnu Sahasranam appears in the Mahabharata. It is a part of this section where Bhishma is speaking, and all those teachings in detail are explained in the Mahabharata, but the Bhagavatam gives a synopsis. And after having given those instructions, Bhishma then says, all my duties are over. Now he withdraws himself from all the worldly thoughts and he focuses his full attention on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he starts remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead and how he has been kind. And what is that vision of the Lord that Bhishma is most attached to? You know what Bhishma is thinking as he is leaving this world? He is remembering Krishna who jumped down from the chariot with arrows sticking out from his body and blood coming out, with his hair scattered full of dust on the battlefield, rushing towards him. Chakrapani, with the wheel in the hand, rushing towards him. To Bhishma, that scene seemed like a lover running towards his beloved. That was his vision. He doesn't see like us. He didn't see a warrior. He didn't see Krishna coming with a weapon. He saw that is the kind of love that he had with the Lord. He was actually experiencing the Virya Rasa, the rasa of chivalry where the Lord is rushing. And remembering that beautiful pastime of the Lord, looking at the face of Krishna, being so grateful to the Lord for all the Lord's blessings throughout the few hundred years that he spent on this earth, Bhishma, fully absorbed in the thought of the Lord, gave up his material body and achieved the lotus feet of the Lord. So as this happened, all the great sages glorified. The devatas who had assembled in the heavens, they started showering flowers on Bhishma because this was one of the most extraordinary events earth had witnessed for a long long time. Okay, so that completes the brief synopsis of the chapter. Sorry, I've gone ahead by another 10 minutes or so. So I'll take a pause here. So if there are any questions or comments, anything, then we can quickly take. Thank you very much. Okay, so I assume none. So thank you very much. So